This is Autoline Daily, the show dedicated to enthusiasts of the global automotive industry. Dealerships across the U.S. were hit with 2 cyber attacks yesterday. CDK Global, which provides back-end software for nearly 15,000 car dealers, was forced to shut down its dealer management system because of the attacks. The software is used for parts, service, accounting, finance and insurance, and vehicle inventory. The first attack occurred yesterday morning, and the second attack happened later in the day, which will shut down the system at least through today. While dealers say it is a headache, they've been able to work around it by doing things the old-fashioned way and taking down information with a pencil and paper. Speaking of car dealers, they enjoyed their best years ever during the COVID pandemic and the chip shortage that followed. With inventory tight, they raised their prices significantly. Wall Street analyst John Murphy from Bank of America says before COVID, dealers typically had a gross profit of $1,500 to $2,000 per car, not including the luxury brands. During COVID, that shot up to $6,000 a car, and now it stands at $4,500. Murphy says that if competition starts forcing prices to come down, most of the price cutting could come from dealers. But he says even though their profits have fallen from the COVID highs, they're still twice as high as they were before. But the European car market has been struggling ever since the COVID pandemic. So far this year, it looked like the market was getting some traction as sales grew. But last month, new car sales fell 3%, according to the ACEA, the Automotive Constructors Association. But the real news is that sales of electric cars fell 12%, and in Germany, they fell 30%. PHEVs fell even more than pure electrics, down almost 15%. Gasoline cars were down 5.7%, and diesels were down 11.4%. Diesels now have less than 13% market share. But there was one segment that was up: hybrids. They were up a strong 16% and now have 30% market share, up from 25% a year ago. And that's a trend we're starting to see in many global markets. Hybrids are red hot right now. And while EVs are slowing in Europe, they're gaining ground in the US. S&P Global Mobility says EV sales shot up 14% in April after a poor first quarter. Automakers sold over 102,000 EVs in April, despite the fact that Tesla's sales were down 17% and its market share in the EV segment dipped below 50% for the first time. Tesla had 46.3% of the EV segment in April, compared to 63.8% the year before. S&P Global uses registration numbers to track Tesla sales, since the company does not report them by region. But there is a several-month delay in collecting the data, which is why we're reporting April sales now. If you take Tesla out of the equation, though, U.S. EV sales were up a whopping 60%, with big increases from the Mustang Mach-E, Toyota bZ4X, and the Hyundai Ioniq 5.
Trusting tires designed for the long haul, because you'll always go the distance for friends. That's what really matters. Bridgestone Alenza tires with an 80,000-mile limited warranty.
A number of Chinese automakers are ramping up their self-driving efforts in the wake of Tesla starting to get approval to test FSD in the country. And now we may have a better idea of who has the best chance of competing. According to Gasgoo, tech company Huawei has a team of 7,000 people working on smart driving technology, which is way more than BYD, who has 4,000 people, while XPeng has 3,000, NIO has 1,500, and Li Auto has 800. And several of those also beat out AV companies Waymo, who has about 2,700 workers, and GM Cruise, who has about 1,500. It looks like Huawei had a real advantage building its team, since it was already coming from the tech industry. And with almost double the people working on the tech, the automakers that have partnered up with Huawei could have some of the most competitive systems. Those companies include Chery, Chang'an, GAC, BAIC, and ADO. And speaking of Chinese automakers, XPeng claims its new EV, the Mona MO3, has beat the Lucid Air as the most aerodynamic electric car, although just barely. The Air has a coefficient of drag of 0.197. The Mona MO3 is said to be rated at 0.194. You may remember the solar car company Lightyear from a few years ago. It claimed its car had a coefficient of drag of 0.175, but it went bankrupt and pivoted to offering its solar charging system to other automakers. But other top performers that are on the market include the Tesla Model S and Mercedes EQS, which both have a coefficient of drag of just over 0.2. But going back to companies that went bankrupt, it's really hard coming up with a new car name, and Fisker's demise might actually lead to the name Ocean living on. Electric reports that Lucid has filed for the trademark rights to Lucid Ocean in the US. Who knows if it will get approval, but the names Air, Gravity, and Ocean have a pretty nice ring to them. Ford is trying to encourage its dealers to sell inventory faster. It's updating a program that will give dealers an upfront credit worth 1% of the MSRP of most vehicles. Currently, Ford reimburses floor plan interest charges based on how many days a vehicle stays on the lot, up to a maximum of 75 days. The current plan was enacted 2 years ago when inventory was low and cars weren't staying on dealer lots for very long, which meant that the credits weren't worth very much. But now that inventory is piling up, Ford is making the change to help incentivize dealers to keep inventory moving. According to Cox Automotive, automakers in the US have a 74-day supply of vehicles, but Ford and Lincoln have more than 100 days. So the company says it's aiming to cut that down to 50 to 60-day supply. Some car buyers are worried about purchasing an EV because they're afraid they'll have to replace an expensive battery. But Tesla says its owners don't have to worry about that. It recently released data showing that the battery in the long-range versions of the Model 3 and Y only lose an average of 15% of its charge after 200,000 miles of driving. And the Model S and X are even better. They only lose 12% of their capacity. Tesla points out that the average vehicle gets scrapped when it hits 200,000 miles in the US, so the battery will last the life of the vehicle. And besides, owners of ICE vehicles also have to replace their engines. According to the Production Engine Remanufacturers Association, 1.5 million engines are remanufactured a year in North America. And we invite you to join us for Autoline After Hours later today. Some of the topics on the show include the meltdown of EV startups, the Detroit 3 being advised to get out of China ASAP, what Tesla needs to do to kickstart its sales, and whether those tariffs are going to stop the Chinese. Industry expert Jack Keebler and Paul Eisenstein from Headlight.News will join John and Gary, and we welcome you to take it all in as well at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. But that brings us to the end of today's show. Thanks for making Autoline Daily a part of your day.
Autoline Daily is brought to you by Bridgestone, solutions for your journey. Intrepid Control Systems, over-the-air engineering boost your game. MEDC, where Michigan businesses are powering the future of mobility. Tejan Automotive Technologies, the formula for better mobility. And by ZF.
Michigan is leading the charge in mobility and innovation, and I can't think of a better state to be in.
There's nothing wrong with heavy metal.
Hey, lighten up.
But with world-class composite material, Teijin Automotive Technologies makes vehicles lighter, safer, and more eco-friendly.
Intrepid's NeoVi Pi, allowing automotive engineers to interface, capture, and monitor vehicle data using Raspberry Pi. As a matter of fact, it's the automotive industry's first robust platform for Raspberry Pi, featuring Intrepid CAN-FD technology and Raspberry Pi Compute Module. The NeoVi Pi is designed for automotive environments, allowing use with relative power ranges and applications. In addition, the NeoVi Pi enables you to use the Raspberry Pi for compute while avoiding additional development to adapt to network environments. That makes the NeoVi Pi powerful enough to solve your vehicle network problems, yet small enough to fit in your backpack. One of many Intrepid tools used for developing zonal architecture and software-defined vehicles.